Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the special council meeting to order. There's the one item on the agenda, the appeal of the order to comply for Severn Drive, which we've had discussions on that before. I'm going to ask staff to update the situation. We received your memo, and I understand a lot has been accomplished on that. So staff, someone from staff, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, Your Worship. We have, after following today's site inspection from a bylaw officer, happy to report that there has been the insurance of a vehicle. There's been the removal of a number of offending items, including various pallets, boxes of newspapers, and I know it was part of a separate action as well, but we were able to determine that 2 shipping containers were also removed from the property. It's important to note that there is one derelict vehicle which is uninsured or improperly insured on a hardtop surface in the driveway, but that is permissible. There's an exemption of 1 vehicle under the unsightly bylaw. From a bylaw enforcement perspective, the site is now in full compliance.
In your opinion. Now, I'm going to ask members of council, I think you all have the memo complete with the pictures. Now, if you're satisfied that there has now been, the unsightly situation has been taken care of, you can make a motion to rescind the original order, or we can go ahead and we'll hear from Mr. Wong and just go through it that way. So does anyone want to make a motion? Councillor Day. No, just a minute. Councillor Day.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we drop this proceeding. I'm very pleased that Mr. Wong has rectified the problem, so I'd be happy to make that motion.
Well, the order is to...
Second.
The motion is to rescind the original order.
Yeah.
Further discussion on that? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So, Mr. Wong, the original order has now been vacated. And just hang on a sec. Yeah, the original order has now been vacated, and hopefully we won't get into this situation again. So with that, I'll ask for a motion.
Thank you very much.
I'll ask for a motion to adjourn
Chairman.
council meeting. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried.
Aye.
Brings us to the General Purposes Committee meeting, and I'll call that to order. May I have a motion on the minutes?
So
Moved and seconded. Discussion on that. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. We do have one delegation today, which is from TransLink. And so I'll ask those parties to turn on their video and introduce themselves and give us their presentation.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Cooper. I am the project manager for Transport 2050, and I will be giving you an update on the development of Transport 2050.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much. Oh, this is not the right one. Apologies. Okay, so as you are probably aware, TransLink has been working on the development of Transport 2050 over the course of the past 2 to 3 years, working closely with the Mayor's Council for Regional Transportation, as well as your staff, representatives on the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, as well as the Regional Planning Advisory Committee. It's been a long process, and we have developed a draft strategy that provides a blueprint for the regional transportation projects, policies, and programs. TransLink is required to produce this strategy every 5 years. It is a shared strategy. We've been working collaboratively with Metro Vancouver on the development of Metro 2050, as well as Climate 2050, and as I said, with staff from across all the municipalities as well as with the province. We're building on a solid foundation in this region of a long-standing history of regional planning. We've also been developing this project in 3 phases. The first phase happened in the summer of 2019, and that really was a listening exercise of what are people's values, what's the vision for the future, and what are your ideas for transportation in the future. It was TransLink's largest public engagement period in history, both in terms of the length. It was 5 months long, as well as the breadth. We went to community events in every municipality in Metro Vancouver, as well as our neighboring regions in the Fraser Valley, as well as the Squamish-Lillooet district. We had a lot of feedback, and we considered that feedback. We worked with municipal staff to develop draft goals, as well as 3 transformative actions that we felt and Mayor's Council felt that we needed public opinion on before we could move forward with incorporating them into the draft strategy. COVID-19 did create a bit of a pause in that when we launched that engagement, but we were out earlier this spring, and now we're getting ready for phase 3 engagement of the full draft strategy launching in October. So just to recap, I'm sure you are all familiar with Transport 2050, but some of the things that we heard in phase 1 that has formed the basis on which we've developed this strategy is that people really value natural areas and parks. Access to shops and amenities is really important to people, as well as proximity to transit. So really the land use elements are really strong when we're developing the transportation plan. Some of the concerns that people raised are probably no surprise to anyone here. Housing affordability, road congestion, and climate change. Those are continually the top 3 concerns. Sometimes they change priority, but we know that we need to make some progress on those collectively. And then the priorities for the region that we heard really about transit expansion and improvement, providing transportation options that are timely and convenient, and providing a transportation system that's cost effective. So in phase 2, when we were out earlier this spring, we asked people if they supported the 5 draft goals that I'll just give you a short overview next, as well as 3 transformative actions. And so we heard from a lot of people from across the region and a diversity of backgrounds. So the 5 goals that we engaged on in phase 2 was convenient choices. So this is a recognition that not everyone in the region has the same number of choices available to them. And so how can we improve that for more people across the region so they have abundant, universally accessible choices, allowing them to conveniently connect to the opportunities without needing to rely on a car. For many people, the car is the only option. So how can we increase the number of options they have? Walking, cycling, shared transportation services, as well as transit. Reliable choices is the second goal, that we have reliable choices to get us where we need to go on time. So this is not just on our roads, though we recognize congestion is a big issue in this region, but also how can we get transit moving more reliably, as well as goods movement. So a lot of aspects to reliability there. The third goal is affordable choices, so that we all have affordable choices so that people of all incomes can easily live and move in this region. And what we're proposing in Transport 2050, and we've been working with Metro Vancouver on, is a combination of housing and transportation costs, and whether we can look at some of the lower income elements and ensuring that people can afford to live in this region. Safe and comfortable choices, that we all have safe and comfortable choices that make us healthier and happier. So this is going to really recognize that not everyone experiences the public realm in the same way, and that we may need to do some things a little bit differently going into the future to ensure that everyone feels safe and comfortable. And then carbon-free choices is our last goal. So we all have carbon-free choices enabling us to achieve our provincial and regional climate action targets. Again, this is a recognition that not everyone can afford to buy an electric vehicle right now, but that we all want to make more carbon-free choices. So walking, cycling are great opportunities, but not many people have access to good walking and cycling facilities. Transit going into the future, as we invest in the more carbon-free transit, could be options as well. So how can we bring more options to more people? The 3 transformative actions that we were talking about back in phase 2, people first streets that invite walking, biking, and rolling. And so this is really building off of the trend that we were seeing in the pandemic, but also a recognition that walking and cycling are some of the most cost-effective ways of getting around. The second transformative action was the fast and frequent rapid transit. That's a competitive choice for most longer trips. So I'm sure you remember we were out talking about 2 potential conceptual rapid transit networks, trying to assess people's opinions on them, and then took that feedback, and in phase 3 we'll be releasing the draft preferred networks. And then action 3, automated vehicles that provide convenient access to car trips without adding to congestion. So this is a recognition that automated vehicle technology is quickly developing, and that we have an opportunity as a region to make some key decisions on how that technology could be deployed to achieve our collective goals and vision for the future. So again, we are getting ready for phase 3 engagement launch coming up soon in October. We're going to be engaging on the full draft strategy, but we recognize that it is very dense. It's about a 100-page document. So we're not expecting everyone to want to read a 100-page document. So we're going to have a quick survey option where people can read a 6-page summary document and give their overall impressions. But if people want to go in a little bit deeper into the whole draft strategy, we'll have a deeper survey option for them. We'll also be holding stakeholder and public workshops, as well as elected official workshops. And so you should have received invitations to those, and that's where more of the detail on the draft strategy will be shared, and that your input can be received. You're also welcome to work with your staff to provide comment, and that is what we have planned for phase 3. So I welcome any questions that you may have on just the process development, and apologies that I can't share more details, but we are getting ready for launch very soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions of the delegation? Anybody? All right, it's probably too general. We're not getting any questions at this point, but Caitlin, I'm sure that we will in the future. We'll have many observations, and we'll have a full input in due course. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks so much.
All right, so moving from there, we have the temporary patio program update. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. My husband has an interest in a business that participated in the temporary patio program this year, so I will excuse myself.
Okay, so going to staff, Katie Ferland or anybody, it's been pretty successful to this point. You're suggesting we carry on, right?
Yes, Your Worship, that's correct. We're recommending the program is extended to June, and staff are seeking direction for exploring the development of an ongoing program on public property. Thank you.
Yeah, all right. We'll go to questions. Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the report. It's a good report. I agree with you. I have 3 questions. One, why are we only extending it to June if it's so successful? Why wouldn't they extend it through, let's say, September 1 or September 10th of 2022? As opposed, because it's obviously, we're starting to June, we got July, August, tourism opportunities, etc. So why would we do it? And the other question I have, why wouldn't we look to make it a policy?
Okay, Katie?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the June 1st date is in alignment with the province of BC and the BC Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. They made some emergency changes to their liquor licensing program, and they've extended those concessions to June 1st. So our timeline is to correspond with that. This also allows time for businesses to pursue avenues for permanent extension.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that last comment for permanent expansion. I think that's good. In your report, unless I missed it somewhere, you didn't list the 6 temporary patios that were on city property. It'd be not that I'm glad we're doing that, but it'd be nice to know the businesses that do have patio expansions within there, so people know that, if they're going to go to X restaurant and they know, for example, I'll say one in Steveston that's only got 7 or 6 seats inside, but can have 3 or 4 or 5 outside. It'd be nice to know I can go to that restaurant and have a chance of at least being able to sit down, but not knowing that they are part of the program. So I don't go there because I know they're already full.
We can get,
So,
staff can give us a memo on that before this goes to council next week.
And my last question, the heritage alteration permit is required. Are we actually making changes in heritage by allowing the patio program? If we're going to a sidewalk or an alleyway or a laneway, is that really, I'm not criticizing the idea, but I'm hoping that those are just a matter of fact once people apply.
Wayne? Wayne, did you want to comment?
Through the chair to Councillor Milwaukee, in terms of Steveston Village, should we receive direction from council to institute a program related to public space, we are recommending that form and character guidelines would need to be developed for those patios on public space in order to ensure they respond to the heritage character of the village.
My comments, Your Worship, a good report. I support it wholeheartedly, and I hope we can think in the future to make a policy regardless of what the province does. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for this. It seemed that it was quite popular in some places, certainly. And I know some of the businesses are looking at the sort of complication of having the infrastructure that they built out on, say, City Street onto the parking spaces. So some of them have pretty significant wood structures. Is there an option then, if they don't renew it, could we help them out with storage of that, or is there different options within that? Because it seems to me that part of it is that they want to store that patio, and are they necessarily serving food and drinks throughout the winter? And if they are serving food and drinks throughout the winter, are we then considering how having them put heaters on city property and building it up a little bit further so that they can actually protect people from the weather?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the way the COVID-related temporary patio program was designed, the business is responsible for furnishing their own temporary patios and storing those items when they're not in use. Council did introduce the ability for business to add coverings and heaters and other aspects to allow them to continue through the winter. At this point, the intent would be to report back to council before next spring and before the expiry of the temporary program with some answers to some of those questions.
All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. I would like to suggest that we write a letter to the province asking them to extend their deadline to the end of summer so that we can basically, the business owners can know that they've got tomorrow or got next year's have next summer's summer, so it's worth it for them to make whatever upgrades that are necessary. I don't think it makes any sense for this all to be as of June. It really should be the end of September.
Question of staff on that one. Are they actively working on an extension, to your knowledge?
Your Worship, to our knowledge, the province is not extending their temporary program beyond June 1st. They have indicated to businesses that that extended timeline was in order to give businesses time to pursue permanent structural changes to their liquor licenses beyond this extraordinary measure.
All right, so what are we looking at what it would take to make it permanent? Because right now, there's a lot of compliance issues. Are we looking at that?
Yes, Your Worship, that will be included in staff's analysis and report back, the options for a permanent ongoing patio program on public property.
All right, so number 2 for the staff recommendation, staff be directed to explore the development of an ongoing program to allow patios on public property and to report back. That's what you're talking about.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay, so Councillor Day, I think that's taken care of.
From our perspective, but what about the province? Because the province, I mean, if they don't allow the liquor license to be extended to these patios, they're not going to get the kind of customer traffic.
A question of staff. As I understand it, these places, as long as they're allowed by bylaw to occupy premises, they can make the application for a permanent extension and expansion of the liquor license, can't they?
To your worship, yes, they can make the application. If there's an increased occupancy, they would have to make a structural change potentially to their liquor application.
Right. So there could be various aspects to it, but the fact is, they can make application. And so going back to Katie's notion, this is the idea of extending it to June so that businesses can consider that, amongst other things, right?
Your worship, that's correct.
Okay. Councillor Al.
I really like the idea of extending this to program for another year, and also, as staff recommended, to explore the future program. However, I want to ask a few questions and also some comments. Number one, now, the overall tone of the report is that it's been well received and welcome. But have we received any kinds of complaints or concerns by other parties, such as maybe people not participating in this program?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Au, there have been a handful of complaints received since the program began, mostly related to noise and pedestrian access. Both of those issues are addressed in the guidelines of the program. So when a complaint is received, the bylaws staff would attend and ensure that the business understands and complies with the guidelines of the program. We haven't undertaken a broad community consultation. Should we receive direction from council to pursue the development of an ongoing program, we would include that in our analysis and report back.
Okay, very good. My second question is, right now in the program, are the number of seats outside dependent on the number of seats inside? Is there any particular ratio to say how much you can have outside based on the number of seats you have inside? Do we have that kind of guidelines?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, the occupant limits for an establishment are total. So whenever a business wants to make a change to either their number of occupants or the layout of their seating plan, that would require an application and applicable health and safety reviews, and in some cases, a structural change to a liquor license from the province.
Okay, I want to give the feedback that in my contact with some of the business people, I think they have concerns. For example, some of the business people, they might want to have the seatings outside. However, because of the landlord or other reasons that they did not support the restaurants going outside. So I think these people felt that they have been deprived, or it has created unfair business playing field for them. And secondly, when we look at the program in the future and hopefully making it permanent, I think we also have to look at some of the quote-unquote compromise that we've made. Because we know that based on the concept that this is only temporary, I think we might have make some compromise in some respects. And if this is going to become permanent, I think we have to look into those kind of features. For example, as I already mentioned, this is also changing the business models. And I don't and I wonder, in the future, there could be places where with very limited seats inside, but a big plaza outside and then a big number of seats outside. So do we want to have that kind of business, with quite unbalanced inside and outside seatings? So I think, yes, we should explore for the possibility of making this permanent, but there are issues that I think we have to address and pay attention to. So those are my remarks.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the report. It is a good report and quite comprehensive. I did wonder about the June deadline myself, but noticed that that was a provincial rule, so an odd time for them to choose for 10. But a couple questions have already been asked and answered. So the only remaining one is just on the success rate. Like there's 64% continue, 20 no, 16% undecided. So what I was wondering was, looking at the map, was there any correlation or analysis of those numbers? Like, was there an area that was, like Steveston, for instance, versus the center of Richmond, that was more positive or more successful in terms of having these? And I guess that'll be part of the analysis that comes back. And then are there areas in Richmond that are more suited to it if you got into kind of an entertainment district kind of concept with this and other forms of entertainment? So was that part of the analysis yet?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, when we conducted the poll of the existing permit holders in the summer, we didn't ask them to sort of let us know what neighborhood they were in, so we don't have that level of analysis by neighborhood. However, your question about, which neighborhoods may be more suitable to a patio program in the future, that is the kind of analysis that we would be doing if we receive this council direction, and we would include in our report back.
Thank you.
Okay, someone want to move the motion then?
Moved.
And seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And Councillor McPhail can come back in. Brings us to number 3, the TIBCO software for data analytics, business intelligence implementation. Staff, is there anything you want to add to your report? Grant, I guess, or anybody?
Yes, Your Worship, it's Grant here. Nothing further to add to the report. We're happy to answer any questions.
Right. Let's see, are there any questions? Councillor Hobbs?
Oh, thank you.
Or was that from before? No. Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, this was a very interesting report. Thank you for that. And one question I had was just on the example of proof of concept. You talked about 3 areas: finance, customer service, and economic development. So the finance side of it seems to lend itself to that kind of analysis easily in most people's minds. So I was curious, when it comes to customer service and economic development, what kind of data would that be? Or what's an example to a lay person like myself in terms of what kind of things you'd be looking at for that? And just a couple other questions.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the data sources that we would rely on would be such things as permitting, bylaws, and in regards to zoning data. And so, essentially this platform would have the ability to aggregate and take a whole bunch of data and allow a lot of very deep analysis in context of answering many different questions. Right? And so it would be able to visually show an example of how zoning has evolved over the city over periods of time, and certainly show the loose use of such things as industrial land use or commercial land use, or how we've protected agricultural land use. So there are many, many examples here within the city that we've gone through where, there would be use of data that is gathered by the city that would then be presented in a way that would be visually very compelling. In the case of customer service, as we have, of course, calls for service, and we have permit requests or various other things, we would then establish metrics or measurements that would then know the volume of these requests, how long these requests take to fulfill, how long it takes to have a full permit come through the system. And so this system would be able to, again, see the end-to-end study or the end-to-end result of all these types of requests and report back to council.
Okay, just a couple others.
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, too, I did appreciate the fact that there was an explanation in there about TripTech and its cost, which looks a lot lower, and really its evaluation is only like 7% less. So I appreciated that. I did wonder also if there were any Canadian proposals, but just getting into the analytics again, leadership and being, advanced in terms of analytics, like you just described, can be very productive and efficient. But is there any demonstrated proof of concept of this particular system or company? I gather there is. So it's something that's tried and tested. And then just the last question would be, are there any systems or offsets that we're going to cease doing if this is implemented? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, in answer to your first question, yes, there were many examples or proof of concepts presented by the company in question as to some real-world results of where this technology has provided a lot of value. Probably one that was most notable is since the outset of the pandemic, this company has put on an online portal, a data analysis portal, that was collecting worldwide data of COVID infections as well as vaccinations by country, and they have a near real-time view of essentially what the state is of the pandemic throughout the world, and are able then to visualize or show each country as it represents in terms of their inoculation rate and their rate of infection. And so actually it's become a very powerful tool for many different stakeholders to go and assess and analyze and understand what the results are. In regards to your second question, I'm sorry, can you just repeat that second question?
Well, just in general, with this investment in this technology, is there an offset? Is there something that ceases to be done when this replaces it?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, it's not really replacing anything. This is essentially enhancing our ability to better understand the data that is being generated by our operational systems. And so as we have transactions, as we do business with the public, as we collect information and data, this enhances the ability now for us to really understand what that data is telling us. This system is very advanced in the context. It also has inherent artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities, where it's able to process a lot of data very, very quickly. It will, of course, allow staff to reduce a lot of manual effort, a lot of manual exercises, and automate many functions. So in that context, it makes staff much more productive.
Okay, thanks. So much greater capacity. Thank you.
Councillor Howe.
I want to ask a question on, in the agreement, or maybe in the future agreement with this company, are we going to set a cap on the cost? I ask this question because I've been involved in other projects before in the health sector, and what happened was, after we enter into the program and then the project, then they said, oh, we need more money. We find this problem, that problem, and at the end, the cost was 3 times, 4 times more than the original. So I just want to see if we have any preparation for this kind of things to happen.
Through the chair to Councillor Owl, yes, within the context of this agreement, we're looking for an initial approval of a 5-year term with the right to renew for an additional 5 years as part of the context of that approval. We have essentially initiated a cap of no more than 2% per year as far as an increase. And so it's well under the inflationary rate and CPI. And we believe that we are in a strong position to have that carry on throughout the full term of the agreement.
Yeah, but again, I hope that they can agree to finish the project within the estimated cost and not to ask for extensions or more money for more things to be done. I've seen, as I said, right, I've seen that before.
Yes.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Al, this is really in context mostly of services and a licensing agreement. And so essentially they're providing us a product where, we would then internally over time be able to be self-sufficient in terms of doing the work of analyzing and pulling the information together to provide the results.
All right, may I have a motion then? Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, opposed, carried. Thanks, Grant. That brings us to the Sustainability Progress Report, 2015 to 2020. Pretty impressive. Peter Russell, did you want to introduce that?
Mr. Chair, I have nothing to add. I did want to note that there obviously have been a number of contributors who've concurred to this report, and all those staff are prepared to speak to those areas if there are questions.
Okay, so let's go to questions. Councillor Day.
Yeah, I have to say this is the best report I've read in a really long time. I was really proud to be a Richmondite after reading this, particularly like on GP 50, when you mentioned that we're the first municipality in North America to require level 2 EV charging stations in new builds. And on page 52, we're the only city in Canada that has platinum E3 rating for the city fleet. That's just phenomenal. And then on page 67, that number 5 road was the first public road in Canada paved using 40% reclaimed asphalt. So I just couldn't be more happier with this report. I really hope we take the time to let the public know about our accomplishments, because if we do a press release or do a story, I really think that would make people proud, just like I am. Great report. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. For your worship on this item, I have a few questions of staff. First, a higher level question. Is it automated that we go to the next 5-year cycle and have a similar sustainability progress report in 2025, or does a referral need to be made now to plan that in the next round?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there is no set frequency. I will just note that it's after that kind of period you can take perspective on what has occurred globally, which is the intention of this report. And council do receive a number of reports, sometimes annually, such as the solid waste report and the water report, that bring more regular updates to council.
Thank you. A follow-up question, through your worship, it would be, I know I've seen the initial phases of the CEEP, the Community Energy and Emissions Plan report that's been completed, and I'm aware of a number of other strategies that the city has. I guess what I don't see, and maybe you can direct me to it, is where do we track the changes of things like green infrastructure, of vegetation, of ESA network, environmental sensitive area network. If it's not in this report, where is it that shows canopy loss or canopy growth? So I have that question, and one more.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there are multiple updates that occur frequently. So, for instance, when the 2014 CEEP was adopted, there was a 2015 update and a 2017 update. So those would be the reports where we'd bring high levels of detail. And I've already noted the examples of the solid waste and the water quality report, which are annual, which provide a lot of detail on those issues.
Thank you. If I may then, through your worship to staff, final question. So many of the dates that in this report, and as you just mentioned, were before my term. So perhaps it's my lack of experience going through the large cycle of this. But regardless, I would like to bring up one suggestion that I don't know if it, at this stage, cannot be an amendment because you'd have to pick apart the whole report, which I'm not asking you to do. But I'm thinking like an appendix could be added, something that would be a goal, a challenge that exists in each of the 10 areas in the report, the way its section is, at chapters. Because I go to the end of one of the sections, like section 6, thriving natural environment. In there, it mentions ecological network management strategy, but I think in this progress report, we should be including why it's not going as well as it could go. Where are there existing challenges within the city, within our service contractors, within other levels of the government, within all these different realms? But I think that part I feel is missing in this report. Like, here's where we are, but here's why we're not even farther along with some of the goals. So do you have a statement on that? Am I missing the appendix that says here's the challenges, and here's how we're going to get over them and improve even better progress the next time we get a report on.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, no, there's no statement like this in the report for the sections that are in there.
All right.
Thanks.
Councillor Hobbs.
Oh, thank you, through the chair. Well, I echo some of the comments already made. This was an excellent report, very educational for me, and I think for anybody who reads it, and some people have asked me about these kind of initiatives. So, first of all, I did like the very beginning too, the vision. I do have a question, but just about the Healthy Island City, I thought the emphasis on the island is important, figuratively and literally. So, and the initiatives I thought were also excellent. Just on the tracking of the initiatives, is there a comparison or any kind of correlation to what other municipalities are doing? Because, I mean, we're doing very well, but we're part of a larger kind of ecosystem, so to speak. So is there anything that stacks us up or compares us in a way, in a competitive sense? Or best practices, for instance?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, there is some regional reporting that does take into account these matters through Metro Vancouver and others. Some cities have been tracking indicators over the years.
I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back?
Staff have seen those reports, but by and large, this is, I would say, something that's unique, this level of reporting.
Okay, just one other question then. That's just my competitive side coming out, so thanks. The federal government grants for diking in particular, I think it mentioned $40 million. Is that something that we can anticipate to be ongoing in any way? Because clearly it's very helpful in flood prevention and diking upgrades.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, yes, that's definitely something that the city will continue to pursue. It is one of the key funding pillars as part of our flood protection management strategy.
Yeah, okay. I can see that it was like, a significant chunk of it. So I just wondered if those governments are intending on having those continue. So just one last comment, I think, for people if they read through it, there are some outstanding numbers in here. The growth in things is quite amazing, like large item pickups, just as an example, going up by quite a few fold. So thank you very much. It's an impressive report. I'd encourage people to read it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steves.
Thank you. I just want to commend staff, a fantastic report. I've been waiting for this for a long time. I made the referral back in 2019, and actually, just a slight correction. We were for the first city in Canada to adopt the Blue Dot program that was asked for by the Suzuki Foundation. And at that time, we promised we would bring a report back like this every 5 years. And the reason I raised it in 2019, I think that was the fourth year, and we should have got it in 2020 to meet their objectives. But a year later is a minor problem. It's an excellent report, and I suggest that we do send a copy to the Blue Dot program of the Suzuki Foundation to say, hey, look what we've done, and also send it to Metro Vancouver. I keep raising at the Climate Action Committee and the Zero Waste Committee and at the Planning Committee that we have had no major comparisons of what other cities are doing. There's an advisory planning group of city planners that get together from time to time, and they pass on information. But we don't get anything like this. And I think it's important that Metro Vancouver get it. I think it's important that it goes to the Climate Action Committee in particular and the Zero Waste Committee, maybe even the Housing Committee, so that other communities can read it and find out what we're doing. And what I've asked at Metro Canada, Metro Vancouver, is on the Climate Action Committee in particular, is that we should know what other communities are doing. We were the first on district energy. I understand that one or two other communities are now doing it, but I don't know much about what they're doing because nobody ever tells us. We know that we've approved a district energy plan at Metro Vancouver just recently using the heat energy produced at the Metro Vancouver incinerator waste facility, and that's going to provide heat for housing units in Burnaby. And we know that Metro Vancouver has initiated a program like that in North Vancouver with the new sewage treatment plant. But we don't know what else is going on. And I think this is a blueprint that every city should be following, and they should be sharing that information. That said, I do have some other comments I want to make. I just wanted to, we had an agricultural advisory committee meeting this morning, and Metro Vancouver is drafting its 2050 agriculture plan, and we were discussing it. And under the discussion was one of the issues that is in our report about Kwantlen. And basically, one of the reports we got, and I think we may want to not add it as an addition here, but I think we should blow our own horn a little more on the Kwantlen issue as well, because we initiated that in a meeting with Skip Triplett, the president of Kwantlen. I think, goodness knows, around 2000. Yeah, it was 2006 during the Habitat for Humanity conference in Vancouver. We had a delegation associated with the United Nations. Chuck Al was involved, coming from the school board, myself, Linda Barnes, and the mayor. And we started that Kwantlen program one night over dinner and a handshake. And it has bloomed and blossomed. The report we got today from Metro Vancouver staff is that large farms, the middle-sized farm is disappearing all across Canada. The large farms, they're becoming larger farms elsewhere in Canada. Here in Richmond, in the Fraser Valley, and a lot of it's got to do with this program, we're getting more smaller farms. And Kwantlen apparently had a tremendous increase of the number of young people taking their courses in Richmond here to go farming on smaller farms and using our school farms and incubator farms. And this year, apparently, they've got a record number of students wanting to take part in that. So we have started. In fact, when the Jean-Ming Jun met with us, the person that initiated it, he's since passed away. He said that if we did this, we would be the first on the planet to develop such a program. I know we're the first in Canada and probably in North America. And I think the program is working extremely well, and I think we need to tell the world about it, especially what I heard this morning of how successful it is. So, great report, and a lot of things that we can use in this report to build upon and to expand our programs as we go ahead. So, thanks to staff for putting it together. But please do tell Metro Vancouver and the Suzuki group, Blue Dot, hey, we're doing what you asked us to do.
Okay, thank you, Councilor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to follow along Harold's comments there. Thank you to the staff. An absolutely outstanding report, and I echo every comment that was made. And I remember when we voted for the taking part in the Blue Dot program, and basically this is the culmination of what we adopted back in 2012. For those that were around at the time, and we've been moving forward. And I support everything that's going on because it's an ongoing process, and it's our community that it's there. I agree with Harold. Metro Vancouver needs to get it, because obviously the attitude towards sustainability is not the same in all the 22 regions or municipalities and areas. And I think we have distinguished ourselves. But we can't let up, and we can't stop now. We've got to keep going with initiatives. I'd like to see us echo the metrics that we have, and it was brought up earlier, and I think it's important. Just because we have a certain metric and we've done a certain thing, what does it take now to get to the next level after that in a particular area? And I think we need to have that. That wasn't necessarily what the report was supposed to do. There's some suggestion there in it, but I think in each of the areas we need to do that. I also think, Your Worship, in expanding this, I think the province needs to know and the feds need to know what we happen to do. Because if we're going to ever apply for grants, for example, it was brought up, we're always asking for money for diking. We're always asking money for dredging. We're even supporting the Harbor Authority and theirs. I think if they see what the city is doing alongside some of the partners in the community, they're more likely to get some funds. I know when I sat in the Harbour's board, Harold's on it now, but we were begging Ottawa to give us money to dredge. And I think the most at that time we ever got was $165,000, which was really toughened in today's spending. And I'm not sure what Harold can jump on that and what the Harbour Authority is getting now, but I think it's important that we have this to back up and we also share it because it is accountability to it. And I agree with making this available to our publics and the public of Richmond. This is their report. This is our community. Even though it's a broad overview towards the sustainability, it takes an understanding of what we're doing. And I think for the environmental performance of Richmond, this puts us in good stead. But as I said earlier, we can't let up now. Staff, keep up the good work. Keep pushing us. Keep bringing those ideas forward. And I'm sure we're going to respond in a positive direction because the emphasis now is on climate action more so than anything. And we need to be there in the front. So staff, again, thank you very much.
Just before we go to the next speaker, which is Councillor Liu, I just want to, the point was just made, we should send this to the province and the feds, like Harold said, we should send it to a couple entities. I think a more effective way to do that very thing would be, as we make grant applications, use this as a foundational and a reference document that we would send to them. Because if we just send it to them out of the blue, they'll just give us a nice letter saying that they've received it, thank you very much, and that'll be the end of it. Whereas if we use it constantly to remind all the parties of what we have accomplished, I think it gives us credibility and a better chance for the various grants that we may apply for. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. It was a lot of information. It was really exciting to see some of the work that we've already done, and it's exciting to see some of the things that we're continuing to work on. Looking at GP 61 and the water use, I'm just wondering if the agricultural water use is embedded in this, and if it was possible to strip it out. Because it occurs to me that we had, several years ago, we went to stage 4 water restrictions. So we weren't using as much water because of the water restrictions, but maybe because it was hot and dry, the agricultural sector in Richmond was. And I think it'd be interesting to understand the difference between all the work we've done as a city to try and reduce the usage of water, and then to understand what our farming community needs to keep going, and how our work, it's not necessarily undone by it, but it's the needs that we have for water in our community and where those lie. Is that possible to strip it out? Is it, does this only include residential?
Through the chair, I'll call upon engineering to provide this answer.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, yes, this does include the total amount. If we want to factor that out, we can certainly do that.
Okay, because it occurs to me like we had a really hot, dry summer this year, right? And probably there was quite a bit of water use, but that being said, you know, I think a lot of people were cognizant of their water use. I think people were restricting their watering to the days they were supposed to. You know, it was sunny, you didn't need to wash your car that often. So I think to understand where we're using the water more specifically would be helpful, and a pat on the back for the people of Richmond.
Through your worship.
Go ahead.
I just to add to that, through you to Councillor Liu. Yeah, certainly the climate change aspects, the heat waves we're having in the summer and the droughts is something we very much have our eye on, and we're engaged with Metro Vancouver on their long-range water planning as well. We've been very successful with our water metering program and managing residential use, but we do see shifts in the agricultural sector and otherwise, where typically, historically, we provided water from the river to support the cranberry operations and a lot of our agricultural operations, but we see some evolution there where, for a variety of reasons, including management of contamination, farmers are moving to using potable water and paying for that. So what does that look like going forward? Is that something that we can service, and as opposed to maybe treating river water or something like that. These are certainly things we have our eye on and we're exploring for the future.
All right. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to staff for this great report. Many highlights, that's for sure. You know, many of our successes and challenges are directly impacted by provincial and federal program strategies and legislation. So while I agree with you, Your Worship, about sending this out as we apply for grants, I think that it would be worthwhile to also send this to our MLAs and our MPs. We have 2 new MPs, so they may be interested in where we are. And I think for our MLAs, give them just more of an updated picture of the things that we're doing and how it ties in directly to some of the, some of the things we talk about them when we meet with them. Thank you, and thank you to staff.
All right. Councillor Al.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you for the very informative report. I'm very interested to learn from staff in the future about what kind of activities that they're going to do to share this information with the general public. I noticed that on GP page 38, staff mentioned about they are looking at the opportunities. Because I think this is a very important thing. Looking back into what we have achieved, I think the most important factor is that we have very strong partnership and also public support. However, I think we still could have more support in the future if we can share this information in a understandable manner by the general public. I think nobody's going to read the 2 attachments, right? I mean, in terms of the general public. But if we can have creative methods, or other kinds of presentations interesting enough for them to pay attention to, I think we can increasingly getting even more people to stand behind the city in doing this kind of projects. So I'm looking forward to hearing from staff what kind of the things that they're planning to do in the future. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Au, yes, staff are looking at many opportunities. Clearly, social media is an opportunity, but that would be probably used with a hook. So maybe a short highlight linking it to the broader report. We're also investigating video opportunities as well to bring to life the report and elements of the report.
All right. Councillor Wolf, you've already spoken once, so did you have another question?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd actually like to refer this back.
You want to
If
refer
I need
it
a second.
back?
Yes.
Is there a seconder for a referral back? There is not. I suggest the motion that we would make would be, first of all, the staff recommendation would be number 1. And taking from the various things that have been stated, that copies be forwarded to Metro Vancouver and the Suzuki Foundation, David Suzuki Foundation, to the attention of the Blue Dot program. That would be number 2. And that copies of this would be forwarded to our local MPs and MLAs, and that that copies be forwarded to the federal and provincial government, I guess it'd be ministers of the environment, in addition to a direction to staff to use the report to support future grant applications. Does that make sense? Someone want to move it? If it does,
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Is there any comments on that? Discussion on that?
Good.
All right, then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
That's carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. That brings us to the meeting schedule. So you've got an updated memo, if I can find this. Now, the difference between attachment 1 and attachment 2 is basically attachment 2, I think it's attachment 2 makes allowance for UBCM. If I've got that wrong, let me know. But aside from that, the staff had to update this because remember, we've got an election in October, so we had to make arrangements for a new council meeting and then what flowed from there. So maybe you could clarify to staff, which one has, okay, option one is with no UBCM adjustment and option two is with. Okay. We'll go to Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. So as chair of the Planning Committee, I've been in discussions with support staff, and it was my understanding that we were going to bring forward a calendar that made every month have 2 Planning Committee meetings, and I don't see that. Is there a change?
I'll ask the clerk to comment on that.
Through your worship to Councillor McPhail, I was not under the understanding that that was the direction, but we can certainly provide a further calendar option for council to consider for next week's council that would add additional planning committee for each month.
Well, traditionally, remind me, traditionally we've had planning committee on the first and third Tuesday. Councillor McPhail, have I got that right?
Yes, that's correct. There was a change, Your Worship, and then what happened, going to 1 meeting a month, and then the past several months we've had to add committee meetings because there was so much work.
I wonder whether we don't want to refer this back and have that change made, because certainly from my point of view, we don't need a special planning committee meeting. We need to go back to the 2 meetings. But Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if there's a referral on the floor right now, but
There is not.
if there
is not.
There's not. Okay. I don't want to make it because I'd be against it. Because I think the planning meeting, as has in the revised schedule of this year, has been quite good. One of the 2 meetings has been quite heavy. The other one is not so much. I'm not on the committee. I just attend. And the other comment I'd make to that is, if there really was something that needed to be put on an agenda before or after the planning, could it not go to general purposes? Like if it's that important that it's a rushed decision, or not rushed decision, but an urgent decision that needs to be made, then just bring it to the next GP meeting, which would come up even sooner than the next planning meeting. So I would say if we need a special one added, it worked great in my mind. Oh, and I also wanted to speak in favor of attachment 2, the one with the UBCM adjustment. Thank you.
I'd like to reply on the 1 meeting versus 2 meetings. Planning committee has always, certainly in my experience, I think that they've had 2 meetings a month on the first and third Tuesdays for decades, for generations probably. I think that we have needed the 2nd meeting, and I think that it should be accommodated. That's my feeling. Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a former chair of the Planning Committee as well, and back when I started, we've always had 2 meetings a month. It gives stability, it gives a direction, it gives us a time to reflect, it gives opportunity in the community that we serve, the opportunity to know that if they've missed the first Tuesday of the month, they can get on the agenda on the 3rd Thursday. I think it just brings everything back to where it should be, and I support what you say, Your Worship, and I support the Chair, Councillor McPhail, and her deliberations in trying to get it back on the floor. I think to say there isn't work for both meetings, to pile something up and work by exhaustion to try to finish an agenda at 6:45 at night or 7:30 when there are heavy items on the agenda is not fair to anybody. Not that I don't mind the workload. I've never complained about it. but I'm talking about the subject that's on the floor. It doesn't get the same attention as the item at 4 o'clock got. And because for obvious reasons, and I think to put it off to the next meeting to know that we're automatically going to have one makes imminent sense. It brings stability and competency to the planning committee. Thank you.
Councillor Steves. Harold, you're muted.
Yeah, I just want to say I have found these special planning committee meetings rather confusing, and I'd certainly like to get back to a regular schedule. When you're on the regular schedule, staff are able to spread the issues out, so they are spread over 2 meetings. With the special meetings, sometimes we get a lot, and sometimes we don't. So, and we don't know what day it's going to be on. And I think that I'd like to be able to plan ahead and know that 2 Tuesdays a month are for planning, and I think it works a lot better that way. And I'd certainly like to see a return to it. We have done that. I chaired planning for years as well, and many years ago, because I've been on parks for the last 20 or 30 years. But we always had 2 planning meetings a month going back decades.
Councillor Liu.
Through the chair, I agree with Councillor Steves. I think that we should plan to have 2 planning meetings a month. I think we can decide that we're either voting on the UBC adjustment or not, and then see the updated schedule as it comes. But it's my understanding that we've voted to stop having the second meeting because of the pandemic, but that wasn't to mean it was supposed to keep going in perpetuity. I think everything had slowed down and there was a reason for it, and now it's time to get back to business. We've opened the doors to City Council. Apparently the public can come in now, so I think, we're having regular meetings again in council chambers. Some people are choosing to join remotely, and that's their prerogative, and that's great, but I think the schedule should go back to normal, and we need to be as normal as possible.
Yes, I agree. That was the reason and the rationale for going to the one meeting. So does someone want to move referral back?
Move referral back to staff to include the 2 council meetings a month.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. Councillor Day, you had something more?
Yeah, I do. Because of the pandemic, we are in chambers having our planning committee meetings, and we have the plexiglass and everything else. So we can't go upstairs to the Anderson room yet. Can the schedule at City Hall accommodate 2 meetings a month in this room?
Oh, the problem isn't the room. The problem is having the schedule to accommodate.
But
I guarantee that this room will accommodate as many meetings as we want.
Perfect. Just want to make sure.
Right? Right, Claudia? There you go.
All right.
She's
Perfect. Thank
nodding.
you.
Councillor Wolf, on referral.
Yes, thank you. I will state my opposition on this referral for 2 reasons. One, as was mentioned, to make the process easier for the public. If they're not sure which of the 2 meetings they need to block a couple hours off to attend, then that makes it a challenge, and committees, nobody shows up because it's hard to know when will your item come up, how long do I wait, is it even going to come up this week, or do I got to come back again in 2 weeks? I know as a member of the public who struggled to attend committee meetings and council meetings in person for a long time, having 2 was a challenge or a barrier. And the second thing I would just mention, looking at the planning agenda for tomorrow, it's true there's 1 large item in there, but it's not warranting the need to go back with this referral. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
I'll ask Councillor McPhail if you have any comments. I believe that one major report that's going to Planning Committee tomorrow will probably take a couple hours.
I'm sure that it will take lots of discussion. This is the 3rd time it's coming back, and I'm prepared, to go for a couple of hours. But I think, going back to some of the other comments made by councillors, I think there needs to be certainty for councillors as well as the public. And applicants are made aware of when their application will be coming to a meeting. This is published in the newspapers, so members of the public are more than welcome to attend. And I think now they'll be able to have the option to attend in person as well as register and attend virtually. So I would support the recommendation on the floor. Thank you.
Okay, the motion on the floor is for referral, so we'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. And may I have a motion to adjourn?
Move adjournment.
We are now adjourned, and we'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting. So may I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, opposed, carried. Amendments to the consolidated 5-year financial plan to staff. Anything to add to your report? Mike or Jenny? Or
Your Worship, we have nothing to add, but Jenny and I are happy to answer your questions from Council.
Okay. Someone want to move it? It's moved.
Move the recommendation.
Yeah, it's moved and seconded. Discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we have the consolidated fee bylaw, the amendment bylaw, et cetera, et cetera.
Recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Ivy, anything to add? Or staff?
The consolidated fees bylaw, yes, there is an amendment to be added. Under FIN 64, the property at 8660 Beckwood Road should have a $3 per day charge.
All right, so with that change, I'll take it that.
Move the recommendation with that change.
So that's moved and seconded. Councillor Day.
FIN 32, we talk about animal control bylaw and impound fees. And it states that a neutered male or spayed female dog is $51, but if they're not, then it's $154. I just want to confirm that that wouldn't come into effect until after the dog is, say, a year old, because you cannot spay or neuter a puppy.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the animal control bylaw currently states that all dogs in Richmond must be spayed or neutered at 8 weeks of age. We are currently looking at an amendment to the animal control bylaw to bring it into line with the 1 year age group for spay and neutering.
Yeah, well, I can't support it the way it's written because it's wrong. It does need to be amended. When can you have that done?
We can do an amendment through your worship to Councillor Day. We can do an amendment before year end or by January. The current bylaw has been at 8 weeks of age since its inception.
Okay, so staff, if you could make a note for the minutes of that assurance from council or from staff, that expectation. So on the motion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we have the permissive property tax exemptions.
Move the recommendations.
Moved and seconded. Ivy, anything to add to your report?
To the chair, no, there's nothing to add.
Okay. Councillor Day.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Brody. On page FIN 81, we're talking about the Highway to Heaven, $522,000 in reduced fees for property tax exemption. Do all of the churches along Number 5 Road now farm the backlands so that they've earned the exemption?
To the chair, to Councillor Day, most of the properties on the Highway to Heaven do some sort of farming. Whether they are extremely successful at their farming may be questionable. However, due to COVID and the fact that a lot of the religious organizations are closed, I'm not quite sure whether they can get the volunteers in place to come in to help them farm, because most of them rely on their volunteers.
Okay, so for this year, I think we give them a buy, obviously. But for next year, I think we should, right
Yeah.
now, be telling them that, you know, come 2022, we're going to be looking for active farming, or you might lose your exemption.
Yeah, if
Through the
staff-
chair, yes.
If staff could take that as direction, I think that kind of a warning would be quite appropriate. All right, so all those in favor? Any opposed? That is